people with disabilities don't use our website or don't use our products and stuff.
But aren't you going to fix them? And they say, oh, well, we'll get to that at some point.
They are aware of accessibility, but still things don't change.
Cross that boundary from talking about accessibility to doing accessibility.
If we just spend a quarter of the time that we do speaking about accessibility actually trying to do something, then we would be so much further.
Even if half the people who are doing the accessibility don't do it right, at least there's will to try.
Hi everyone, this is Carrie on Accessibility, and welcome to another episode of the Epic Ally podcast, where we deep dive into tech and accessibility. In this episode, we will be discussing digital accessibility with two of the founders at EasySurf. EasySurf is a Canadian company created by people with disabilities, improving accessibility for everyone with disabilities. There are so many companies that work in this space, but I absolutely love that this is a disability-led company and effort, and I am 100% behind them. Usually I talk about shiny new tech gadgets, etc., but I think this particular topic and this type of work is incredibly important. In this interview, we do discuss how to get started in this space, and I think this is an awesome opportunity for those who are blind, low vision, visually impaired that use assistive technology, so stay tuned, especially for that answer. I do want to disclose that I am a tester with EasySurf, but this in no way, shape, or form is sponsored by EasySurf, and I just love the work that they do. However, this podcast and this channel is supported by the amazing COA members on YouTube and Patreon. If you want to support the channel and the work that I do, please consider becoming a member. You get exclusive videos every week and so much more. So let's go ahead and roll the interview, and I will meet you on the other side. Thank you so much for joining me today. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself? Noah, why don't we start with you?
Thanks so much for having us, Carrie. I'm Noah. I'm one of the co-founders at EasySurf. I help manage a lot of the testing and coordination and helping to manage our team. Myself, I've got a disability. I have got a chronic pain condition that affects my hands. So I'm a user of speech recognition software, and that's kind of what got me into accessibility a few years ago. But yeah, Tamarah, how about you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. I'm Tamarah. I am also a co-founder here at EasySurf, also a social media content creator. So I came to accessibility many, many years ago. I grew up having multiple disabilities, and so use a variety of predominantly screen readers, braille displays, and blind low vision products. I mostly handle the business development side of things here at EasySurf, so a little bit of education, a little bit of process. I also do some testing, and that's me.
Awesome. Now let's rewind a little. What is EasySurf and what do you guys do?
So we focus on trying to help businesses and organizations remove digital accessibility barriers that are present in their products or in their workplace. And we are a team of people, almost everyone on the team has a disability, and we combine the lived experience of people and the feedback that they provide with the more systematic type of digital accessibility, being auditing and making things conform to standards. And we also have people on our team who are developers and have a background in digital technology to be able to also help businesses and organizations fix the issues that are present. So we try to both identify and fix issues, and we do it both from the systematic standpoint, but also from the standpoint of people with disabilities. I hope I captured everything there, though. Tamarah, anything that you feel like needs
that's
to be
great.
added?
So there are a lot of accessibility related companies out there, remediation, you name it. There are so many companies out there offering accessibility, usability testing. What makes EasySurf stand out?
What makes EasySurf different is we are disability led, and we are disability first. We are daily users of assistive technology. So we have a really in-depth understanding of what works and what doesn't, both from a personal perspective and a professional perspective. So because we have such a disability-centric view, I think it leads to a lot more collaboration and a lot more um, real world application than maybe somebody who's come to AT and isn't a daily user might deliver to a customer.
Did you have anything to add, Noah?
No, I think that's always been what has differentiated us, is that we're really focused on what is actually going to make a difference for people with disabilities. And I think that we also put a lot of emphasis on helping people actually fix the issues. It is not that it's easy, but it's more straightforward to point out problems. It takes a lot more to actually be there to support organizations to help them fix the issues. So we have the technical ability to fix issues, but also to understand what it takes within an organization to get them to make those changes. So helping them prioritize and get these changes approved. That is also where we put extra effort, and I think something that makes us a little more unique.
Do you feel it's an advantage for businesses and companies to work with people that use the assistive technology on a daily basis, those with disabilities, and why?
I think there's a level of understanding when you are using the technology on a daily basis that a lot of people who just learn an assistive technology either to teach it or to give somebody a general sense of what it takes to use on a basic level, you're not going to be familiar with the roadblocks that a daily user is going to encounter. And how you've seen that implemented both positively and negatively. So, giving that feedback of where you've seen it done well is going to help companies really streamline their process and not wonder what the solution is going to be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I absolutely love it. I've seen so many companies out there, and sometimes they do have testers with disabilities or who use assistive technology, but who better? That's my question. Who better to test and to help make things more accessible than people that actually use it, who are actually invested, and it actually impacts us, right?
I just want to add to that because I think that one of the things is that when you do like an accessibility audit or you do a bunch of testing, it almost always comes up with a whole bunch of issues. And the problem is that we're not going to fix all of them immediately. There often has to be a prioritization or understanding where the biggest impact is. And I think having people with disabilities being able to actually give the feedback helps us say, okay, this is a much more important barrier. This is the one to focus on. Whereas if you didn't, you would just have this big list of issues and you would be taking a guess as to where we should focus to make things more accessible. And that can be challenging if you're not actually talking to people that uh, encounter the barriers. So I think that's another area where it's helped a lot, is just being able to get people on the right path of we're not going to fix everything, but if you fix these 20% of issues, that's going to help a lot. So that's helped us guide where we try to focus our attention.
I've seen a slight trend, or I've seen this floating around, this idea of trying to fix the smaller things that you can before addressing systematic issues. What would you say about that?
Yeah, well, I'd like Tamarah to add to this one, but I think first and foremost, I think we believe in the something is better than nothing. So I think if that's all that we can do is the small stuff, then that's okay. But at the same time, we also don't want to send the message that all you need to do is the small stuff, and that's okay if we just make these small changes, because there are more complex things that really do block people from being able to access the information. So the progress over perfection is fine if we continually make progress, but with the understanding that it's not let's make these small changes and then we're good and we don't need to do anything else. I think there's a certain amount of we need to be pragmatic in how we view it, but also not forgetting that we do need to tackle the larger issues, and we can't just accept that, oh, these are so complex and we're never going to be able to do anything, so we're just going to improve contracts and change some fonts and that will be all we do. So I like to get people started on something, but I think we never lose sight of the fact that we are trying to remove all the barriers for everyone at some point, and we're not just going to settle for the just doing the easy stuff. But yeah, Tamarah, I don't know. I know we often have these conversations with companies and internally. So
Yeah, I think we always try and come at it from a solution focused mindset. We do want to kind of hit that point of everyone having access and making it the best possible iteration it can be. But we're always very clear when we're working with clients that accessibility isn't a destination, it's a journey. Because we don't want people assuming that once they've hit fixing 30% of the issues, or they've even ticked off everything on the list, that they assume that their accessibility journey is done. Because every time they update the website, every time they add new things or change different modals, we have to go back and say, is that in fact accessible? So we want to really kind of give companies that iterative mindset of, okay, we can start small, but we have to build on that.
Definitely. I can't agree more. So how did this all start? What made you guys decide to start EasySurf, and how did that go?
well, I think it sort of just unfolded. There was never really much of a grand plan, to be honest. My partner, Ticia, had been doing freelance work as an accessibility auditor. And I, myself, as an assistive technology user, was helping her from the perspective of people with disabilities. And we initially wanted to have something that would help like the smaller, medium-sized organizations include people with disabilities and give them some of that feedback. I actually came across Tamarah's work through YouTube because she has so many good videos on accessibility and screen readers and Braille. So I actually just reached out to her and because we needed more help. So we got in touch and I talked to her about what we were hoping to build and what we were trying to do. And I think we were always very aligned with the vision and what we were, the problems that we saw that needed to be solved. And that's sort of how it started in the early days, or at least how I remember it. But yeah, Tamarah, I
No,
mean,
no, that's it. That's exactly it. You reached out, and I was trying to figure out if you were a legitimate company or one of the 100 spam emails I get a day. And I took the call and went, "Yeah, no, I'm very aligned with this. I want to see where this goes," and the rest is history.
Don't we just love that all those spam emails as content creators?
Yes.
So I want to dig in deeper to what is it like to be disabled business owners and to run a disability first, organization.
it is actually very challenging because I think that as someone with a disability, like I've had difficulty, finding employment in like that traditional office environment, the 9 to 5 with the deadlines and all that stuff, because my health needs fluctuate so much every day. So we try to create an extremely flexible, adjustable work environment. And it is challenging to balance that, to give everyone the flexibility that they need while also meeting the expectations of tight deadlines. And I think we've managed to both offer like that amount of flexibility and meet customer demands, which has been challenging for sure. It's also been difficult on myself because I think as much as you want flexibility, sometimes it is challenging when there are certain things that need to be done at a certain time. But I think by having a team of people that all understands that there are times where you need to support others and there's times where you're going to need support yourself, I think we found a way to balance the work demands and workload of everyone in a way that everyone, I'm hoping, has gotten the flexibility that they need, while also we've been able to kind of meet what we need to do business wise. I don't know, Tamarah, you want to talk a little bit about that part, because I know that's also something that we discuss often because it is challenging.
I think our biggest challenge has been that we need to very deliberately not follow a traditional corporate or traditional business structure because we want to be so inclusive. It means a lot of uh, adaptations, modifications, flexibility. We want to meet people where they are to give everybody the opportunity to work because, at least in my view, most people can work to some degree if given the right tools, opportunity, and support. Even if it's just 15 minutes a week, you are still capable of contributing something to the greater kind of accessibility uh, movement and provide your perspective. And so that has been our biggest challenge is developing those systems to make sure that people have what they need to succeed, and not just do the work but thrive doing that work. So it is an ongoing and iterative process to get to where I think we're all happy with, both, like Noah said, meeting those deadlines and making sure that people feel heard and have their needs met.
I also want to add, because there's a technology side of things that I did not anticipate, which has been really complex for us, in that we work with people who use a different assistive technology, who all have their own preferences around what software they like to use. And that has been much more challenging than I've expected, because we basically use Microsoft, Google, and Apple products, because everyone kind of has their own preference, myself included. There are certain things that I like to do in certain places. So we end up with all these different types of files and drives, and people have different communication preferences. Some people prefer email, some people prefer a Slack messaging, some people prefer text messages, some people prefer calls. So that is where it does get a little more complex, because we are trying to allow everyone to use the technology and communication that they prefer, and that ends up in this big complex network of things, which I think we've managed to make work. But it did highlight how, yeah, I do wish a lot of the programs and software did work better together and did have more features that were easier to use by more people, because I think that part has been challenging for us.
Mm, yes. And it's not just, I think, the communication and the preference, but also, is this service even accessible? Is this platform
Mm-hmm.
even accessible with the screen reader? So, or whatever AT. Yeah, I can imagine how that can be challenging.
No, that's a really good point, because that does. So whenever we try to use a new product, we have to make sure that everyone is able to use it, and that is surprisingly more challenging than I would have expected going into this. So yeah, that does add a layer of complexity, and it's also why I think there's a great opportunity for these businesses to make more accessible products, because when we make a decision about what we're going to pay for, accessibility is like the number one thing, and there really is not that much competition. There often only is like one, more accessible solution, and then we will get that one purely because it's the more accessible one. And I think that for a lot of organizations that want to prioritize accessibility, there is a big opportunity out there for people to just offer products that are accessible, and there's going to be much
Mhm.
less competition, because they can differentiate themselves that way.
I totally agree. One thing that it can be frustrating too is when the accessible solution doesn't have as many features or not the
Mm,
same features as the platform that isn't accessible. And so it's that frustration.
absolutely.
So that's actually a good place to transition. How do you feel about the accessibility space in its current state? Do you think accessibility is moving forward in your experience?
I think yes. I think there have been significant improvements growing up using AT. What existed 10 years ago is a pale comparison to what we are using today. The integration of AI, for me in particular, has been life changing in terms of being able to access visual information and have almost instantaneous feedback on a lot of things that were completely out of reach to me before. However, that being said, I do think I have seen, and I want to say this as delicately as possible, a lot of ongoing discussions about accessibility and a lot of talking in big groups and talking about all of the things that we want to see in accessibility, but less of that maybe political will or corporate will or uh, business will to actually implement changes beyond just talking about it. So yes and no in different ways.
No, I totally agree. I think I'm often find myself thinking, "Oh, that's so cool! Like we're making such great progress in this area, and oh, I'm so happy to see that people are understanding." So there's a lot of that I think about every day. That I feel like things are in some sense moving in the right direction, but then in other ways, there is a lot of frustration that things that are seemingly very obvious do not change, and they don't change very fast. And then, yeah, like Tamarah says, and I think it's been said before, but I can't remember who said it, but someone has a quote, something like that. If we just spend a quarter of the time that we do speaking about accessibility actually trying to do something, then we would be so much further along here. So there is a bit of a feeling that a lot of it is conversations and talk and wanting to do things, and there is a lot less on the side of action. And that's really where we have put a lot of our focus, is on how can we accelerate that action. Why do things, even though seemingly everyone is kind of on board, why is it so hard to actually get things to change? We're trying to see what we can do to figure out that problem and make it easier to get people from the discussing phase to the action phase. But I think, I sort of think we will probably always be a little bit disappointed at the speed of progress. Um, so, so yeah, so I think it's always going to be a bit of a bit of a yes and no answer there. And I think there are always like pockets that accelerate at different rates. I mean, we're seeing a lot of acceleration in Europe and a lot of acceleration in certain areas, and then maybe deceleration in other areas. So I think it's complex, I would say, and yeah, I know it's not exactly the yes or no answer that maybe you were looking for, but hopefully that summarizes it.
No, I definitely agree. It is very nuanced, but I also very much agree with there's so much talk. They have accessibility statements and a lot of social media posts about how much they value accessibility and want to promote accessibility. But when push comes to shove, accessibility is one of the often feels like it is just uh, pushed down the road.
Mm-hmm.
We can fix that later. Oh, yes, yes. Thank you so much for your feedback. We really, really value it, but for later.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've run into a lot of that with customers. We'll go down the route if they want the audit, they want all of the information, and they say, okay, thank you very much. And it's like they've ticked the box that they've done the audit, they've identified the problems. I'm like, well, but aren't you going to fix them? And they say, oh, well, we'll get to that at some point. We say, well, your website's going to change if you don't jump on this right now, and then we're going to be doing this again. So, there definitely is. I think it's a combination of budgetary issues and prioritization. I've encountered a lot of systemic barriers in mindset, assuming that people with disabilities are not. Uh, we are not out in the world. We're not engaging in these places. So why is it important? And I think unless somebody knows somebody with a disability or knows firsthand what it's like using AT, it's very difficult to convince people otherwise.
Definitely. It's like, well, we don't have blind people playing our game, so why do we need to make it accessible?
You could,
But
and you should.
the reason why probably is that it's not accessible, so they can't play it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know in the accessibility community, you often hear about that people will say, "Oh, we don't, people with disabilities don't use our website or don't use our
Mhm.
products and stuff."
Yes.
Um, but I have heard that firsthand from so many people that it is really, it is. So for anyone that maybe thinks that that's just a rare occurrence or something that is a one-off, I have heard it so many times. And it's surprising. And it's not just about who uses the products, but also people
Mhm.
thinking that within their company that they don't have people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that yeah, that is something that we have to also help bring awareness to. But I think a big part of the problem is that they don't think it's really actually helping that many people.
Hmm. I think there is still a lack of awareness, even though social media is kind of, I think we that work in the accessibility space kind of have social media posts bombarded in our feeds talking about accessibility, accessibility this, assistive technology this, disability inclusion, etc. But people's feeds are different. And so many
Mm-hmm.
people still, to this day, don't understand that there is accessibility,
Mm-hmm.
that this exists, that, I mean, Tamara, I'm sure you can relate. How
Yes.
are you replying to this comment if you're
Yeah.
blind?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
At least
And
once a day, and I'm sure you get more. Like, right.
exactly. And, so there are so many people that don't even use social media, which is kind of wild to me since
Mm-hmm.
in the media, social
Yeah.
media sphere, but there are people who don't use that. And so whether it's a developer or just a user or somebody in marketing or throughout an
Mm-hmm.
organization, they don't understand that from the top down. Then, that's, I think, part of the roadblock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually put out a poll on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and the poll was something to the effect of because almost all websites are going to have some accessibility issues, and the poll was asking, what do we think the reason of this is? Is it because of a lack of awareness, a lack of training, a lack of enforcement, a lack of I can't remember the last one, but what was interesting is it was almost roughly equally split between people's
Hmm.
opinions on things. I mean, I think interestingly, it is the true answer is it's a combination of everything because you can create awareness. I've seen places that where they are aware of accessibility, but still things don't change. So you sort of need it all together. But I think the first place we do need to get to is awareness, and I think we can tackle the other ones after. But it is I think that's part of the reason why things do change so slowly is just the awareness is only part of the thing. You also need to have the money and the willingness and the ability to fix. And I think all of those four combined is why sometimes things are much slower to change than we'd want.
Now, one of my questions was going to be, what are some of your frustrations with the accessibility space? But I think we've kind of about covered it. But
Mm-hmm.
if there was one thing that you could improve in, the accessibility space, what would it be?
I think it would be the will for implementation. I think that would have to be the biggest one for me. If we can kind of cross that boundary from talking about accessibility to doing accessibility, that to me would bring us the biggest step forward. Because even if half the people who are doing the accessibility don't do it right, at least there's will to try and do something, to try and make improvements, to try anything that's going to improve even 1% of the issues. To me is better than just sitting and talking and doing nothing. To me, awareness can only go so far. It has to ultimately lead to actionable change.
I would really love to see more developers understand accessibility and
Mm.
accessibility really be part of the basic training and courses that is included with what developers do. Because I think what can be frustrating is sometimes we'll work with a business that they just built a new website and they sort of expect, oh, it's new, and we're using this website builder that is modern and is so common.
Mm.
Um, of course, they would have thought about accessibility, right? And then they realized that actually it wasn't, and we have laws about needing to have accessibility. So there is something that is, I think, frustrating from our standpoint, also frustrating from people that just paid for a big website, because it kind of seems like, why is this not more standard? Why should I have to build a website and then after go and fix it? So I would love to just see that more developers do understand the basics, so that when we come in as a consultancy, it would be more around optimizing the experience for people with disabilities and not improving the real basics like having headings and alt text. I mean, we really should not be giving that type of feedback to people. And so it's tough, because I do feel like for every website we give feedback on, I fear that there's 5 or 10 more that are created with the same issues, because the people further down in the process are unaware of what they're creating. So I would love if just there was more general awareness at the developer level and in these website building tools to just include some absolute basic accessibility, so that we wouldn't have to be, uh, yeah, going and undoing it for all these websites.
I absolutely love both of your answers, and that actually makes me want to ask you both a really quick question.
Mm.
What are the top three most important and most prevalent issues for your AT that you have seen and experienced?
It's surprisingly simple, actually. It's just like literally, oftentimes buttons are not named correctly. They don't have an accessible label. So I'm using speech recognition software. So that means I'm telling the computer, like, click on this button or click on this button. Very often, that button is not coded in a way that allows me to click on it easily. That's probably just because you're so often clicking on things. That's like the biggest source of frustration. Um, I think the second one would just be that things are really designed for use with a mouse. So they require hovering, they require drag and drop, but I'm not using a mouse. And a lot of those actions, while I can do them with voice command, can take a really long time. I think speech recognition is a little bit different from screen reader in that I don't face as many barriers that straight block me from being able to do what I want to do. My barrier is more in how much time and how much frustration am I willing to put up with. Because sometimes there's something that, I mean, it would take me 10 seconds to do with my hands. It's going to take me a minute or two to do with speech. And if I have to do that thing 100 times, like we're talking about like an extra hour or two that I have to spend doing something. And sometimes I'm just not able or willing to do that. So I think the two frustrations are, there's code level issues, but then there's just general design rigidity that really prioritizes people who are using a mouse and does not really consider that there may be other people who are using the computer differently, and maybe we should design in some flexibility that would allow people who are using different methods of clicking on stuff to do it more easily. I'd say those two buckets are going to catch like 90% of the problems that I run into every day.
For me, it's similar in some respects and different in others. Those code level issues where you have improperly labeled elements, those are huge for me because they're often total blockers when it comes to navigating a website when you're coming across the top menu and all you're hearing is button, 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 button. Okay, what's the checkout? What's the menu? Like, what's the about us? I don't know. I can't use this. This is impossible. The other two fall into what I would call inconsistencies. So when you have a structure on a website, you're expecting things to be in a specific order and be consistent across a website. Like, for example, the title, then the menu, then the content, and then 2 out of 5 times it's different than that, or things aren't where you would expect them to be. That leads to a lot of frustration on my part because then I have to completely auditorily reprocess the page in my brain and map it. And then going back and forth, it's very easy to get confused and lost. And, am I in a sub menu and am I in a sub menu? Where am I? And keeping track of that navigating a GUI just through audio alone is incredibly cognitively taxing. So
Mhm.
inconsistencies play a lot of issues for me. And then the final one would be exporting PDFs as print to PDF instead of exporting it as an accessible PDF. I can't tell you how many documents I encounter on a daily basis that I open it up and it says content is empty. I say, great, this blank PDF does nothing for me. I'm sure there's lots of text in there, but I don't get access to it. So if for me, yeah, if we could fix some of those code level issues, so I know what a button is, I know what a submenu is, I know where I am, um, and then I have access to the same information as other people, that would go a long way to fixing. Just don't do print to PDF, just export as PDF and tick that accessibility box and I'll be your best friend.
Yeah, I definitely hear your frustration. Hopefully, as time goes on, people become more aware and implement, these positive changes. What do you envision for the future of EasySurf?
I think we want to work with organizations that have that solution focused mindset, that have the will and the ability to follow accessibility through from start to finish, even if it's partially. We want to do the work, do the audit, and see some meaningful change come out of that. And we want to work with organizations that share our values for equal opportunity, and see the value in the disability community, and see the value in what our community has to offer, which is so incredibly diverse and so unique in what it is. So that's what I see the future of EasySurf being.
I totally agree with all of that, and I'd like to find a way to have the biggest impact that we possibly can. I think that being able to work more closely with technology that is more widely implemented
Mm-hmm.
across a greater number of companies, to be able to create things like create processes and technology and advice that can go a bit more broad than just working with one company or one organization. That's what I would love to do. And I would also like to bring more opportunities for employment and engagement for people with disabilities. That's also really important for me. I was unable to find a job basically that was flexible enough and that worked with my needs. And I've always wanted to create an opportunity that I felt didn't exactly exist when I was looking for one. So I think what I hope is that through our growth is that we can provide more opportunities for people to who are passionate about accessibility to do this work.
I love it. And lastly, do you have any advice for assistive tech users or disabled people who want to enter into the accessibility space?
Sure. So I think if you're trying to get into consulting, if you're trying to get into AT testing, get really familiar with your AT. You need to be able to have a level of understanding that you can differentiate, okay, what is an accessibility issue from what is you don't necessarily know the command to get to the next thing, or maybe you need to be familiar with multiple ways to solve a problem, or multiple ways to navigate, multiple ways to kind of approach something, so that you can effectively rule out, okay, no, this is not an AT related issue. This is like an accessibility issue in the product that you're testing, or the website, or the app. So having that base level understanding of your AT is fundamental. I also have found that it's an asset if there are multiple mainstream brands of AT that your disability group uses. For example, I'll use screen reader. Knowing more than one type of AT will give you more opportunities to test. I'm predominantly a Mac user, but I also know how to know. I know how to use JAWS and VDA, and narrator, at least basically. So when those opportunities come in, and they say, oh, it's only a PC based thing. Sure, okay, we can just pop over to the other platform and do that test. Then it would be finding the right organization that is going to actually give you fair value for your expertise, and being cautious that you understand the terms of whatever contract or whatever organization you're looking to work for is not taking advantage of your unique assets.
Yeah, I for sure agree with all of that. What I would add is really the importance of communication. If you're doing testing, sometimes you are communicating barriers and issues to someone that might not be that familiar with how your assistive technology works. And something that might feel incredibly obvious to the point of not needing to be mentioned might actually not be that obvious to someone else. So when you're giving feedback, you really want to make sure that you're explaining what the problem is, how severe the problem is, why it's a problem, ideally having some idea of a solution. And then also, like Tamarah says, having the additional context around this may be an issue for this specific AT, but it might not be for that one. And that level of understanding. Also, being able to understand this is not exactly a barrier for me as a more of an expert user, but someone who is more of a beginner might have issues with this. All of that stuff, being able to communicate that so that someone understands it is going to be for sure very valuable. I think also having an ability to adapt based on who you're giving feedback to. I think sometimes you need to understand what the goal of the organization or whoever is hiring you, what they're trying to achieve. Maybe this is an organization that this is their start into accessibility, and they need to, and you need to do a little bit more on the awareness side and helping them with some of the more basic issues. You probably don't want to be overwhelming them and going too advanced. Then you might be working with an organization that has a whole accessibility team and like they really understand this stuff, in which case, you probably don't want to be giving the basics. You probably want to be really getting into the niche subjects. And so I think being able to adapt the way you give feedback by putting yourself in the shoes of the organization, whoever is hiring you, thinking about what would help them, what are they trying to learn here, and then providing your feedback based on that. Rather than just doing the same approach every time. I think that's going to make a really big difference. Whenever we work with someone, I always think about what do they need, what do they want, and how can we help them get to where they need to be, rather than us just giving our standard feedback to everybody the same way.
I love it. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me today. If someone wants to find out more or work with EasySurf, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can for sure send an email to it's howdy at EasySurf.ca, so HOWDY @EasySurf.ca. I almost always make time just to meet and talk with anybody, especially people with disabilities who are using assistive technology, just to chat about, what they could do to get into the industry. And maybe there's an opportunity with us, maybe there's an opportunity with someone else. But I've always wanted to just meet as many people as I can in the space. And so I'm always happy to have a conversation. So you can always send in an email if you'd like.
Well, is there any last things you'd like to share?
Accessibility is important, but I'm sure everybody watching your podcast already knows that.
All right. Well, thank you again. This has been a lovely conversation. The links will be down below, and I hope you too have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it. That is the interview. If you are a company or a developer that has a website or app or a game, I would highly recommend EasySurf for help improving your digital accessibility. And if you are somebody who is blind or visually impaired looking into becoming an accessibility usability tester, I really loved their feedback, their suggestions on how to get into that space. Perhaps in the future, I will create a video talking more about that and how I got started on my accessibility, usability testing journey, but we will have to wait for another episode for that. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. If you like this video or this podcast, give it a thumbs up or a rating. And don't forget to subscribe. If you want to help support the channel and the work that I do, please consider becoming a YouTube or Patreon member. All members get exclusive videos every week. We have monthly meetups. For insiders, you get update videos as well as behind the scenes content. That's it for now. Thanks everybody, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.